this? Awesome. One of the issues that I find with ed tech is that the products that are made for education are often made for only students, right? Which is fine. Like, obviously, we serve students, but there are so few services and products that are for teachers. There are so few supports for teachers. And so I've kind of made it my prerogative to bring support to teachers in different ways. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're building a space, a metaverse space for educators to connect from all over the world and share resources, collaborate, and connect with each other all for free. And so as part of that, we wanted to experiment with education spaces because if you have, done anything in the metaverse yet with avatar-based spaces yet, most of those spaces are actually not very conducive to education. Most of those spaces are built by tech people. And so all of the maps that are built are like rows of desks in classrooms, which is like not the pedagogy that we want to be pushing anyway. And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if educators actually built virtual spaces for other educators that were open source and free to consume? And so I partnered with a platform called GatherTown, and they sponsored a fellowship that started 4 months ago. And we brought in 7 educators from around the world who will introduce themselves to you shortly. And each of them built virtual spaces for education. So they built spaces specifically for their own utility and use case. And then they implemented those spaces with their students and then collected research and data on it. And so today, what you're going to hear about is what that fellowship entailed. You're going to hear from each of the educators who did the research. You're going to see their spaces, which, by the way, are totally open source and for anyone to use and consume for free. Then we're going to go into their spaces and we're going to hang out and we're going to get to talk with them and walk around as avatars. And we're going to try to get to that spot as quickly as possible so that you can sort of get the full-on experience. One thing that I do want to say is that the person who has facilitated this entire fellowship, the one that I sort of like put all of my sort of trust into, is somebody called Terrence Finnegan. He's here. And Terrence is both a fellow and a facilitator. And if you've ever worked with anyone in your life where you're just like, I have an idea and I'm going to hand that idea off to that person, and that person is basically going to run with it, that was Terrence. I have spent very little time on this project because Terrence has basically taken it over and ran with it and created one of the most remarkable programs that I've ever seen. And so thank you for that, Terrence. And so I want to put the spotlight all on the fellows and Terrence. And so take it away, Terrence. The mic is yours.
Awesome. That's quite an intro. I hope I live up to that. Thank you. And it's been such a joy to work with Preeti and the whole concept. Preeti came to sort of me with this idea. We met each other in January 21, I think. And it's just been amazing to collaborate on this and to have these shared ideas and to realize that there's a whole community of people out there that share these ideas. So that's been a real running theme throughout this whole fellowship. So I'll give a brief intro. I don't want to talk too long because we've got lots to get through. We've got lots of fellows here who want to share their experience. But my background is an educator and I'm based in Edinburgh in Scotland. During lockdown, I was doing a lot of informal education before COVID came along. And then because of COVID, I couldn't do a lot of it. We weren't getting into schools, and I was not running a lot of events at festivals, and they just couldn't happen. And I was looking for ways to create engaging and immersive events for young people, and it wasn't happening, and I couldn't find the real engaging events that I really wanted to find until I came across K20 Educators and until I came across Gather and other virtual platforms. And it felt like that world just really exploded, and which was such a joy to see. And in particular, the community of people around these platforms really came together. And I found that I was in conversations with people from all over the world doing really amazing things in education that I never knew was possible. So it was a hugely inspiring time. This fellowship came about right at the perfect time when we were starting to understand what Gather could do, what other virtual platforms could do, and we were finding people that could do it. And so when Preeti came to with this idea of running a fellowship, finding educators that could collaborate together, I really jumped at the chance because I just thought this was exactly the right time to do this. The technology was there and growing, the people were there, and because of COVID, disappointingly, COVID happened, but there were some pluses that this community really came together. So a couple of things I really want to lean into, the fact that we were all collaborating. We found these 6 other fellows around the world, which was amazing. We ran interviews and we saw so many people from all over the world that all could have been fellows, but we had to choose somehow, and so we chose these amazing 6 educators who you'll hear from. And the point from the word go was to collaborate. Right? We knew that this fellowship was bigger, was going to be bigger than the sum of its parts. And everybody was bringing something different to the table. And we selected for a variety of use cases and setups for what sort of educators there were. And so we had people in tertiary education, people in informal education, people in high school, and we were all bringing our ideas together. And Brady at the time was talking about this siloing of education, and it's really interesting to see how like we really have gotten rid of a lot of the silos that we were experiencing because we can reach out to these other fellows. So we were sharing our knowledge within this fellowship. We met once a week, and then we were bringing out the ideas that we were generating into our own practice, and then feeding back to the group. So we had all this knowledge that we were pulling, and we were pulling our maps that we're making in GatherTown, and we're pulling our techniques. So anything that we were creating, and some examples of that are Easy was creating a bot in Telegram that would exist alongside Gather. And that was something that just blew us away. And he just sort of seemed to pick this out of the ether, and it really sort of struck a chord. And then some of us could collaborate and use that knowledge. And this is like a real running theme in this sort of setup where you're using a virtual platform, and you spend a fair bit of time doing something, but as soon as you know how to do that, then that pathway is very quick for you and almost as quick for somebody else. And that's such a strength of a global fellowship like this, where we can create something and then create a pathway for others that just makes it so easy and frictionless for other educators to do these things. Because as we know, educators have no time, and they want to spend as much time in front of their students as possible. So we want to make this as frictionless as possible. And then the last thing I want to mention is the research. So we had this great mentor of Chris Unger, who works at Northwestern University, who've really brought in to help us put together action research in order to figure out exactly what our students were experiencing in these maps that we made. So just as an attempt to give you like a little bit of an insight into what I'm talking about here, I'm going to see if I can share my screen and just show you 2 of the spaces that I built, and this should demonstrate what I'm talking about. I presume that you can see this space, which is the mock trial space. So this is an example of something that I thought would be a really useful resource for other educators. So I wanted to build a space that would be something that another educators could sort of like pick off the rack and use. And when you think about physical spaces that you might want to use as an educator, you think about having a setup for a space that your students could just inhabit and use, right? The resources are already there, almost like having a classroom assistant set up a space for you. So I wanted to recreate that feeling. So if you could pick this space off the rack, then you could have a mock trial space, a model UN space, and a debate space, all sort of 3 in 1. So you could bring your students in here, you just give them the URL, and they can click that URL from wherever they are in the world. And you can give them roles, right? They could be in the jury, they could be in the audience, they could be lawyers, they could even be the judge. And you can just run this space just essentially off the rack. The same goes for if you're using it as a model UN space. So you could assign them a country, they could have discussions in these little private spaces, so they can only hear each other in those spaces. And then move to another table and chat with people at those tables to essentially run a model UN. And then the same for a debate. We had this idea that if you were in a debate, it'd be quite fun actually. If it was an avatar-based discussion, then people who were debating, if the audience wanted to agree with the people on the purple table, they could move to the purple side, or agree with the green table and move to the green side. So this is a real aim for me, is to make these spaces as accessible as possible. So you can just, as an educator, click and go, and then your students can come into these spaces. This is already built. There's no point me telling you how to build this if it's just there and you can get it for yourself. So we're still working on the easiest way to do that, but all the foregrounds and backgrounds are available now on our GitHub page. and I'm adding more as we go. They're not all there, but they're getting there. So you can just pull the foreground and background images and upload those together. The objects like the chairs won't be there, but we're working on a way to do that. So watch this space. And then the second one I want to show you before I hand it over to another fellow is that this was a really early idea that I'd actually shown to Preeti like way back before we started the fellowship. And I've sort of honed in on it a little bit, but this just demonstrates some of the creativity that you can bring to this. So this is a science space where you can teach your students about plant cells. And one of the real advantages for me of this Gather system over something like Zoom is that it's very immersive. And it's something that I felt was totally missing from teaching virtually for a long time. And these virtual platforms are getting really good at this. So if you brought your class here and you're giving a little introduction to what plant cells are, then you can tell them, right, we're going to go into a plant cell, and you could all climb this machine, this zoom in machine, if you can see that. And the sort of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids style, you walk into the machine and it pops you into a different room. So these are a succession of rooms that zoom further and further into a leaf. So as your students go further and further in, you're zooming in on the leaf, and you could be, as you're going, you could be talking about whatever they see. You could be having questions and answers as you go. What do you think is traveling through these veins here on the leaf? What does a leaf do? Why do you think it's green? What other structures do you see? Let's go even further. Okay, now we're really seeing a cell here. So we're almost at the size of a cell. What do you think these green things are? You can see them, they look like little discs. Let's take our last step and go right the way into the cell, and we can look at these organelles, like the nucleus, like the vacuoles, the mitochondria, and we can add things in here, like little resources. If you walk up to them and press X, you can embed any website into this Gather site. So you can see a little 3D, or we're not signed in, so we won't see, but you can see a 3D example of this, of a plant cell. And you can have a whole question and answer session in here. You can send them off in groups and embed more information on each of these organelles, and then come back and they can present back. So a bit of a flying visit on these things, but hopefully that gives you an idea of the power of what we're doing here, of the creativity that you can bring to it, and sort of where we're going in the future in order to make these resources as available as possible to everybody out there, including yourselves. So I'll stop talking. I want to hand over to each of the fellows in turn. When we were picking a time for this, as ever, coordinating a fellowship around the world, it was difficult to find the time. And I think Jessie is here because and she has to go back and teach pretty soon. So I'm going to hand over to you, Jessie, so you can tell us a little bit about what you did in the fellowship and any thoughts you have.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so happy to see you all here today. My name is Jessica Barberry. I am the Director of Learning Operations at the Design Ed Thinking School, which is a small private school in South Florida. In addition to being a director, I also focus on technology integration and teacher professional development. I also have a background in special education, and I also provide the additional exceptional student learning support. And I can't wait to share with you a little bit about what we found as we were using GatherTown in our school. So like Terrence said, we were seeking to understand students' perceptions and also teachers' perceptions, learning and teaching in virtual spaces. And in particular, if I could just share my screen. All right, can you all see my screen? Yeah, oh, good, okay. Our school in particular, we wanted to know how we could use virtual worlds to promote connectedness, social engagement, and academic support. And so how we were looking to do that is, first, I engaged in some preliminary interviews with a small section of students and a small section of our teachers. I was able to demonstrate the use of GatherTown and also lead a few classes collaboratively in these virtual spaces. Then I specifically built maps for academic supports. I built maps to promote a positive school culture. And then very recently, we just did midterm interviews. You'll hear from many of the other fellows. We haven't stopped our research yet. We want it to continue until the end of the school year. So what I'd like to share with you is what we know right now, or what I know right now. And I'm hoping that that will improve as our year moves forward and concludes. So here are the spaces that I built and what they addressed. So academic interventions. So at the top part here, you see there's like a little pumpkin head in
Sorry, Jessica, we actually don't see, if you have 2 or 3 screens, we only see your desktop right now.
Oh, sorry. Oh, thank you. I appreciate you telling me that. Hold on. I'll see, this is the best part of using technology. How about now? Can you see another shared screen?
We can see a PowerPoint now.
Oh, fabulous. This is it. Hey, this is precisely how it went with our students sometimes as well. We have students also, I think it's helpful to address that we have students that meet both in person and virtual. So using virtual spaces was a real win for many of our teachers, as we're pulling many students that are across our district, whether or not they are in person or whether or not they're in their own homes. So the maps that I built addressed the academic interventions that some of our students required, particularly students who were struggling with science, math, and literacy. We built spaces to encourage students to collaborate with one another. I built a space for a weekly school shop where students could spend their participation points, which is part of our positive behavior support system inside GatherTown. And we just recently had a family night in GatherTown. It was a beautiful event, and we are going to be having an end of year event as well, where students are going to be demonstrating their projects in a similar way, much like the fellowship is now with you. So I'll be excited to tell you all about that when it happens too. So our initial student perceptions of virtual worlds, they all were excited and were very interested. And many of them had been using virtual worlds before, particularly FrameVR.io. If you've not heard of Frame, it's another immersive learning space, but it's more 3-dimensional. It's a pretty heavy lift for iPads or other smaller devices, because it requires an awful lot of like 3-dimensional graphic rendering. And that can be pretty hard, especially for cheaper devices or for slower networks. So students had some difficulty navigating that. Our teachers' perceptions, they all already had professional development inside virtual learning spaces. They were unsure how to deliver instruction in these spaces, but they really did want to learn a little bit more. So after we implemented some of our spaces, after we learned together, here's the meat and potatoes. Here's really what I want to tell you. So if you are looking to do this yourself, we found that our K-12 students were more likely to collaborate in virtual environments in a low camera or a no camera situation. There was a lot of horror stories about the use of Zoom or Google Meets. There was too much camera time. When you are within virtual immersive learning environments like these, as an instructor and as a student, you can see the collaboration happening as avatars are moving, and it doesn't necessarily require the camera. Also, that's very helpful for our exceptional learners, particularly students who struggle with autism. Making eye contact can be very difficult and very exhausting. So when that is taken out of the equation for collaboration, there is a lot more collaboration taking place, and students, we found, were actually asking more often to work together, which was a win for us. Environments are more effective when students can explore. Give them a period to explore before you try to teach them. And it might take longer than you might think, so plan that in. And also the need to explore may reset if you're asking students to do more complex tasks in the virtual worlds, or you're adding in more students. So keep that in mind. There is a period of time there that students will have to adjust. All right, and finally, teaching experiences, this is from the teacher side, they seem to be more effective when the environment itself was built based on the need of their student. So that's a great thing to do first. Take stock of what your students need and then construct a virtual world to meet that need. It's going to make the process of instructing a lot clearer for you as an instructor. Teaching experiences appeared to be more effective when clear pedagogy was in use. So take a look. Are you doing small groups? Are you doing team teaching? Are you doing the gradual release of responsibility model? Think about the pedagogy that you're already using that could be improved when you use virtual worlds. And finally, the last nugget of information I wanted to share is that all participation from both students and teachers, they were vastly improved inside virtual environments when there was some kind of in-person component. So we had a beginning of the year celebration where we all could come together and be together in person. And that did seem to enrich all of the activities we had in virtual spaces after that. So I can't wait to see you guys too in GatherTown, and we can walk through some spaces together. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse. I love your style as well. Jesse brought some amazing graphic design skills to the fellowship. If you go into our Gather space later, there'll be a POAP designed by Jesse that you can get. So that was amazing. And just all your experience in working with your students. There's a couple of articles that we'll link to that the fellows wrote, and Jesse wrote a great article about sensory learning in GatherTown virtual spaces. I appreciate that. Moving straight on then, let's get another fellow up here to talk about their experience. Easy, if you're available, do you want to just take to the stage?
Sure, I'm ready.
Great, thanks, Easy.
Just 1 second.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, can you see a presentation there?
Yeah, we got it. We can see
Awesome.
a presentation. Thanks, man.
So, well, for me, this has been an amazing experience. And the area where I tried to focus on was enacting new forms of literacy in virtual worlds. I think that virtual worlds have amazing affordances to go beyond reading and writing and engage in many more types of literacies. So this is my community of students. They are in Fray Bentos, Uruguay. They are part of a program called SECAP. SECAP is a program for kids who are aged 15 to 20 years old, but who have dropped out of middle school. So they are definitely coming from underrepresented and marginalized communities. And one of the concerns the teachers had at the time when I was working with them was their relationship with technology. In particular, they were having severe problems with online gambling in video games, microtransactions. So we were trying to start discussing with them how they make sense of data. So to create these virtual worlds, we used 3 principles. We wanted the experience to be participatory. We didn't want to be us teaching them, but them finding answers to their questions. We wanted the experience to be performative. We wanted them to be in these virtual worlds and enact other identities where they could have more power, where they could be in the center. And we wanted the whole experience to be disruptive. We wanted them to disseminate their findings in novel ways. So to do that, we created a story called Naya Iru. It was developed by a science fiction writer in Uruguay. And the focus of this story was to teach learners about the potential harms of datafication, also the benefits, but to them to understand how data sometimes can be extracted in ways that are non-transparent and that can be harmful. In general, when these type of programs are offered, they focus on the technical aspects of cybersecurity, like, oh, you have to be careful when you're doing this or that online, which is fine. But we also want more critical users of technology. So how can we accomplish that? So this little game, so we did a participatory action research project with youth, and it was multi-sited, so we have more than one school. So the game is an interactive narrative. So you're move around, gather, and you can talk to characters, listen to them. I should have muted this because we're going to hear this lady talking to them all the time. So the plot is all about what would happen if digital spaces were banned. So this girl talks to them, sends them messages on email, on Gather, on social media. She comes from the future and she says, well, you know what? In the future, digital spaces have been banned forever. So you need to understand why they were banned and whether they are worth saving. And to do that, students have to interact with this character and learn from her. And at the same time, they need to ask questions about their reality and try to answer those questions. So this is inspired by a concept called theater of the oppressed, which was an experimental type of theater developed by a Brazilian artist. And basically what he did was creating a theater play where you would see something very, very unfair happening, an injustice happening. And then the audience would be invited to join the audience, to join the play. and they had to improvise a solution to that problem. So this is what we do with the kids in Gather Town. They use Gather as a theater. First they interact with the character by email, social media, but then they interact with the character live. And this character is driven by an avatar, and it has an interactive bot behind it. What we're trying to do there is for them to start enacting their literacies, try to discuss the problems they're having with digital spaces, and try to come up with the possible answers. And at the end of this process, they disseminate their findings by creating their own virtual world, which can be in Gather or in other tools that they select. Here, for example, we have one sample of an interaction with a Telegram bot that helps the students escape a Gather space. It's inspired by that scene in Matrix where Neo is trying to communicate on the phone with Morpheus to escape his office. Well, you do the same thing here. I don't know why the video is not loading, but basically what you do there is you interact with the character with multiple choice buttons, and she helps you escape the room. And at the end, you can hear the rest of the story. Some of the things we found about this experience with our youth was that they really engaged in the research process. They really liked disseminating their findings using the virtual objects. Of course, they loved the game. We did notice that they found it difficult to see that technology is not neutral. So they often found that technology was fine. The problem is us. We don't know how to use it, which is a good thing because that shows that they understand their sense of agency is important. But they sometimes found it difficult to realize that sometimes technology can be developed in ways that can be harmful. It's not just the users not knowing how to use it. And regarding my K20 experience, and just to round up this conversation, I think that we wrote a paper together that we submitted to the site conference, we presented it yesterday, actually. And the whole community talked about the sense of belonging, feeling that we belong to this community, a community of practice, a community of inquiry, that we all felt that we were living in a risk-free environment. None of us were experts. We were trying to build knowledge together. And that's the greatest thing about a community. I mean, Terrence was our mentor, our facilitator, let's say, but he was not the teacher and we the students. We were all learning together, and that felt great. The next thing I loved about this experience is that it was not, when I joined, honestly, I thought, well, maybe Gather is sponsoring this, so they want us to create like spaces for them, like classrooms. And no, the entire focus the whole time was my community of students. That's what K20 was concerned about. So this approach to local solutions to local challenges is great, because then you can start inspiring other people based on the successes and failures that you had. And finally, I think it was super engaging for our communities as well. People were excited about the technology, but also about the project. You know, I'm working now with 9 different schools. We have over 200 students who are going to be participating in this game in Uruguay. And that's great, that's wonderful. And it wouldn't have been possible without all the help I got from this community. So feel free to ask any questions. I'll leave my email in the chat. And I'm gonna stop talking because I know we have plenty of people to talk today. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Easy. It's been such a joy to work with all the fellows and Easy. I'm so impressed that you guys got this paper submitted to the site conference. And yeah, it was just last night that Easy presented this. So really exciting that we're having these repercussions in lots of different areas. You know, I mentioned all the fellows bring experience. Easy and Michelle have brought a lot of academic experience to the fellowship, and it was really great to have you both here. Fantastic. Okay, well, let's move on. I can see a couple more fellows. I'm just going to pick at random. I can see Jay on my screen. Jay, are you okay to jump in next? Fantastic.
A very good day to you. So my name is Jay. I'm a secondary science teacher who is based in Melbourne, Australia. Firstly, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodian on the land that I'm on, which is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. All right, so over the past 3 months, I'm going to share my screen. My students venture around the customized build Gather maps I created So there were a couple of maps that we have looked at, which is on, in this case, we have the digestive system, we have the brain anatomy, skeletal system, and also the circulatory system. What I found with my students in the classroom is that when I'm trying to teach concepts, difficult concepts such as on anatomy, they find it very difficult to understand or even to remember the different key terms on that particular diagram. So I then decided that maybe I should try out Gather with them. So then I use it for the year 8 students. So in this case, the students walk into this particular digestive system model where they assume the role of food that's entering a person's body. So I'm going to move around this map, and later on you can also check it out yourself. So you can just give me a moment. How do I? Yep. So every single student will be in the form of a food, and then they enter the person's body through the mouth at the top, and then they will move around. So while they're moving around the map, they can understand how food actually pass through. And then this could be in a form of an exhibition as well, that a virtual tour that I bring the students along. So they move through towards the small intestine. And then this small intestine is actually in the form of a maze. And then we actually race through, even I took part in that race as well with them. And towards the end, they have to actually come up from the anus. So this is the first map that I've created with them. I'll share a second map with you. So in this particular map, this is the brain anatomy. So they navigate through the cerebrum, the brain stem. So what makes it exciting is because usually in the classroom, I will just use an image, but in this case, they're actually part of it. So they actually remember, and we also do activities on palettes at the end, just to make sure that I'm able to summarize the concepts and they're able to reflect on what they have learned. So I can just show you how this looks like. So that's the cerebrum, and then they can actually move into the cerebrum and so on. So I've also created similar maps on the different anatomy systems. So how this was being done, I basically imported images. So I took images from all around the net, and then I imported it into the platform. I did some editing as well and included different tools. So if you see, there are some activities that they can. So this activity, if they click on ads, for example, it will bring them to a different site, and they are able to explore the different components of it. I will also be sharing with you on the codes that my students have in regards to their experience on the platform. So the first one is one of the students mentioned that in Gather, it's sort of like Zoom. We have to like put the cameras, and like we have audio, but it's more exciting because you can move around, you can explore the place. A second student mentioned that I found that the brain is the most interesting. In Gather, it's kind of like Animal Crossing, and it's also like Zoom incorporated, where you have video, camera, audio, and then you go to different maps in the classroom, whatever the teacher has created. And third students mentioned that my most favorite map was the digestive system because it's the most interactive. I find Gather Town quite interesting because you can interact with one another. And then the fourth students mentioned about Gather Town is effective because it helps me learn by letting us interact with the class. Playing games in the map help me a lot to remember their uses and what it looks like. So overall, I found that it managed to solve the problem that I have had in the classroom, which is on students' engagement and understanding of different concepts. So by doing this, I'm actually able to change the way I teach in the classroom and to engage them using the virtual. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.
It's amazing. Thank you so much, Jay. Every meeting we would really enjoy seeing like another one of Jay's maps, and there's a certain like gross element attached to Jay, like seeing inside the body that Jay had, because you're like, Jay really lent into the anatomy of all sorts of things. And it was just fantastic for science education that was stymied by sort of virtual learning and COVID, to be able to walk into a space that you're like both slightly repulsed by and really interested in, was, you know, showing that there was something there, that there was really something about these spaces, these Gather spaces, where you're having a real sort of emotional, physical reaction to them. So compare that with, a Zoom screen where you're sharing a screen, but it's not as immersive. So that was a really big part of this, that we were all finding ways to really bring our students into these spaces and make them really immersive. And I love Jay's maps for that. There's a few other of Jay's maps in this space that we'll share, including the eye. I think you made a really great space where you got to explore the eye, and then a non-anatomy space, which is the Earth structure. So you can walk into the center of the Earth, which I thought was amazing as well. This is probably another good point just to mention that we, all along this fellowship, this 4-month fellowship, we were building in public. This was a build in public project. So we were tweeting and sharing and sort of live streaming and putting lots of things out there for the community. So we've sort of got a real backlog, sort of back catalog, I suppose, of tweets and YouTube videos and things. So please do explore. And I'll share a Notion page of like the whole update in the chat in a little bit. And that's a whole summary of everything we've done so far and links to the previous updates. So there'll be a lot to share. So bear with us at the end. We'll share that link for you all. Fantastic. Okay, well, let's move on. Let's bring up another fellow. I think, oh, he didn't snack. I mean, anybody's, but I see Michelle's name on here. Michelle, are you here?
Hello, I'm here.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
fantastic. Great to see you. I can. Yeah.
Yay. Where to start? Well, I'm Michelle Bakerson. I am currently an associate tenured professor in the School of Education, where I teach pre-service teachers. My background is in education. I used to be a kindergarten teacher. I still miss that job. It was fun. But I have a PhD in evaluation, measurement, and research design, a master's in ed leadership. Thought I was going to be a principal. And I have a bachelor's degree in business administration and an elementary school teaching license. I've also did some homeschooling and dual enrollment with my own children. So I really have a wide lens when it comes to education. I think everything I do is education. I'm also an evaluator, and I work with schools mainly, but also nonprofits on evaluating programs that they're implementing to see if they're meeting their goals and outcomes. I really enjoy doing that. What I really like to do is create learning environments that are engaging, authentic, student-centered, everything that you've already heard from everyone else here. It's exactly what this fellowship has given me. My style of education is like a co-creation with my students. I like to have them create with me together. And I'm actually having my pre-service students right now. They're about 18 to 24, although some could be older. They are in Gather creating, I just told them to create a problem-solving, critical thinking learning activity. So I'm excited to see what they come up with. So what does it look like on what I did? I created a little video because I knew it would be too hard to pull up everything. So I'm going to share my screen. It goes kind of quick. It's 4 minutes. So can you see my screen? No, not yet. 1 second. Okay. Yes? You see pink?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So Gather, learning spaces, making things fun. This is, you can link anything within Gather. This is my office. When they come in, I have a portal so that they can go directly to my office and meet with me instead of having to walk through the whole, thing with all of the buildings or all of the different steps. I have an information, this I just put up there, but I have my office hours connected to that where they can sign up to meet with me at a specific time. That's a private area. So although I can see all my students if they're waiting for me or not, I can still have a private conversation with my students. So that's my little space. I was trying out isometric, so it worked a little bit. The next, this is I have changed because I have so many resources and that space wasn't quite working well enough. So now I've created a room for each of the classes I teach so I can put the resources, I can password protect the door and only those students with that class can go into it. So we'll see, it's a work in progress. As you have seen from the others, STEM activities work beautifully in Gather. This is my attempt at a beehive escape room. It's a work in progress. Everything you can click on, get information. You can embed videos, and students don't leave Gather. It just happens right there. I'd never seen a bee hatch before, so I thought it was kind of cool. But it's right there, immersive for them. The other part, let's see if it keeps going. So in each room, they'll have to have passwords. Oh, I just saw this feature with Gather. It's a little fun thing. No matter how old you are, you can still have a little pet follow you around. And this thing will follow me I'll go back into the other room and it'll still try to follow me. But I haven't tried it with my students yet. So it's not finished yet, but this is the space. They won't be able to go to the other space until they've solved the puzzle. So that is that one. The yellow doors there, the double door, is a passcode locked door where I plan on putting teacher resources like the lesson plans, the activities, passwords, because I don't know if you're like me, I forget them. Here's another space I created. It's just an empty space. So you don't have to decorate it and put all kinds of stuff in there. You can have an empty space to meet with your students. If you don't have much time, use an already made map. This is just something I pulled off the internet. You can embed everything in it. Here's another one. It's just ready made. I just pulled it into Gather. This one still needs some work, but I like the idea of it. I just wanted to see if it would work. And it worked pretty well. So you can really, like a history lesson when you're learning about the Middle Ages or whatever, you can be in that setting and be immersive. So it could be really fun. Here's another one. This is just 2 images that I put together. My latest trial was a maze. It keeps kids moving. It focuses their attention. They're active. They're problem solving. This was Easter inspired since, Easter weekend. Give them a little prize at the end. And then I have a leaderboard where they fill out their name and then they can see it. This was my original first classroom. And I started thinking, okay, I'm going to redo Zoom on here, but in a classroom. But after working with all of these fellows, they've opened my eyes to all the different things that you can do. Your imagination is the limit. You can embed anything. I really like, Mural or Miro or Jamboard, all those different kinds of whiteboards, because you can embed anything within them. And again, it stays within Gather, so you're not going out. So if you can imagine it, you can do it. That's me in 4 minutes. My research is still ongoing. I teach a semester-long course, so the semester isn't over yet. I'm trying to turn this off. So I will have information by the end of the semester. They'll be doing a post-survey to see how Gather worked. The first half of the semester, I just did it like I normally do. I teach online, different resources, and then I introduce them to Gather to see. So we'll see what they think is the difference. The first time I brought some of the students in, it was so cute because they were, they're like 20-year-olds and they're, nothing is cool for them. But when I showed them like the proximity and I just like simple thing, just walked away and kept talking, they were like, oh, like you could see it on their face. And I was like, and that hooked them right away. So now they're like coming to office hours more and they're like, how do I do this? Or how do I do that? So it's work to engage them at least. That's all I want for them. This particular class is an ed tech class where I'm teaching pre-service teachers how to incorporate technology into their own teaching. So this was a perfect opportunity for me and my students. And to have the support of all of these fellows, they've said it already, but any questions, any dumb questions, whatever, they were always there to help and so encouraging. So my takeaway for you would be to find a group like this. Just put yourself out there and try to have a community because it's, I don't know. I'd have a bad day at work and I'd meet with my fellows and it was like, oh, nothing matters. I'm going to do fun stuff. So I really highly encourage you to get a group like this. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. So, thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Michelle. Yep. Absolutely. Make all the mistakes you want. Huh? That's the way we learn, right? And we certainly made lots of them and figured it out together. Yeah. Sometimes we would run sort of map making sessions together where we would just all be making maps, and part of the time we'd all be quietly doing it, and then somebody would pipe up saying, "Oh, I can't figure out how to do this thing," and we'd all sort of workshop it together. And there was such strength in that. You really speed ourselves up by doing that. So yeah, absolutely encourage you to do that. Reach out and find other people. Fantastic.
Terrence, we might want to move just a little bit faster because
Faster, yeah.
we're
I know.
already at the hour
Thank
mark,
you.
and I want to make sure people get into the spaces and walk
Good
around.
point.
So I know that
Great.
we've got, I think, 2 more fellows left. So if you guys can just, and we can continue the conversations in the spaces also.
Thank you, Rudy. Blake, are you there? And can you give us a speedy summary?
Absolutely. Happy to go quickly. Hi, everyone. My name is Blake Blaze. I spent a year as a high school math teacher before joining the United States Navy, where I was a cryptologic warfare officer. I left the Navy to found a company because I was really compelled by climate change education. So I built a website where students can learn about different climate solutions and how to participate in them. And about a year into that was when I learned about the K20 fellowship. I was actually so compelled by what Rudy was building and by Terrence's example that I participated free as a fellow, and certainly came out on the winning end there. Learned so much from my fellow fellows, and then I kind of ironically, through this virtual worlds focused fellowship, spent much more time with students in real classrooms as a result. So I partnered with a local middle school in Charlottesville, Virginia, Buford Middle School, a Title I school, just meant that it had over 50% of its students on free or reduced lunch. And as a result of my initial idea to do research with them, ended up becoming a math tutor and part-time science sub. So we've not spent a ton of time in virtual worlds yet, but I'm spending a lot of time with students. The research question that we'll be looking at, though, has to do with education and its potential as a climate change solution. So there's a really cool study based off of a college classroom where they found that just 2 semesters of exposure to climate change education had a material impact on students' carbon footprints. And what I'm interested in finding is, does environmental education in virtual worlds translate to the real world? And so we're looking at how middle school students' attitudes towards environment changes after spending time in virtual environments. So the website that I built is called Our World. It's kind of like Duolingo, but for science education and for focusing on climate change education. It's got bite-sized lessons and a climate journal where students can make entries about anything from how they're feeling on that day to being assigned different tasks, like going out into the world and making observations of what they see. And what is perfect about Gather as a complement to this, as Gather is and virtual worlds can be for existing resources, is that it provides a place for students to talk about what they're learning in these lessons. And so in one of the worlds I built, there's a starting screen where they walk around a forest, and there's little facts hidden behind each of the trees that end up being answers to some of the questions that they'll experience in the portal on the website that I had built. In initial tests with students on this home screen, they started using it in all kinds of ways beyond what I expected, which ended up becoming one of the observations I want to fixate on in the end, which is that students will always be a multiplier in ways that you can't anticipate, especially when it comes to technology and especially when they have positive social pressure. So what the next couple months will hold for us is working with 5 7th grade classrooms at Buford Middle School in Charlottesville, Virginia. Here's a picture from one of my first visits to the classroom. You can tell still in pandemic conditions, which made things a little bit chaotic, and it's really all that teachers can do to kind of keep up with the status quo. So going back to Freedy's original point about how much support educators need and what it means for solutions to be educator focused, that's kind of what we had to do, is just like adapt. Like I went from being somebody who's basically a tech chaperone to now being somebody who's like subbing in a local middle school. So collecting information, they'll be using the climate journals on the website. That's how we're going to gauge their attitudes towards the environment and climate change and what they can do. I've set up each of the maps so that students can progress to them without someone supervising them, because right now in class, it's tough to devote time to something outside of the existing standards, which are mostly focused on math and literacy. So it's something they'll be assigned as homework, and we'll be able to progress through without supervision. We're going to host gatherings in the virtual worlds to have discussions about how students feel, and looking forward to seeing how sentiment changes over time as they are exposed both to something that's a little bit of relief from school in the form of gather worlds, and also solutions-focused education. So what I've learned so far, students are extremely resilient and learn very quickly. And we had a lot of times where students were learning how to use technology without teacher instruction. So that was humbling to know that they're going to do sometimes better than the teachers would. Again, teachers need technological support for themselves and their students. In my first trips to the classroom, as kind of the chaperone, was overwhelmed how the teacher had to corral 25 students and each of their individual obstacles with using the technology while the teacher themselves learned how to use it. And kind of finally, technology is a great multiplier when it's deployed correctly and a massive roadblock when it's not. We had a massive variance from class to class about how engaged the students were able to be. And there were some classes where, because of a login error, it derailed the entire class. But with the lessons I learned from other fellows, I'm encouraged to continue in this like informal educator role at a local middle school. I'm very excited to see what Gather will be able to help us accomplish.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Blake. Really appreciate that. I recognize we're running out of time, and we have one more fellow, and I'm so sad that Jibril can't be here. Jibril is based in Sierra Leone, and he was a really amazing member of the team who really highlighted the issues of technology, access to technology and access to Wi-Fi. Right now, I talked to him last week, and they're having a fuel crisis like a lot of places in the world, but it's really affecting their internet connection, and they just can't make it. But he's written an amazing article, and there's another one in the pipeline about access and about bringing GatherTown to Sierra Leone, and he's passionate about it. And the thing that I really took away from Jibril's work is that people were telling him that it's too early for Sierra Leone. They should concentrate on something else, and he said, and his response to this is that if not now, then when? We cannot limit ourselves to a substandard experience for our students, just because there are some technology problems. We need to push ahead with this, and he's a really amazing voice for that. So I encourage you to check out his stuff. One thing that I can share with you just really quickly, because I know we're running out of time, is the space that we were building together, and he wanted to build the National History Museum in Sierra Leone as a virtual version. And this is a little sneak behind the scenes. So this is what you see when you're building a space in Gather. So you can add objects, and I've added a couple of objects here with Jibril. This is Nomoli, which is a very important sculpture in the National History Museum. Some paintings, and there's a ton of history in here. And when students visit here, they can walk up and see a bunch of information about each of these structures. So this is available in the map that we'll share. So please do visit and see that. And there's so much to learn from people from all over the world. And we're very pleased to have Jibril's voice as part of this fellowship. So a couple of things I want to share, just because I know we're like almost right on the hour. The first thing is that we have a summary of all the work that we've done so far. And I'm just going to put it in the chat just now. It's a Notion page. And we did a summary in each month. And so each of the previous summaries are also available through that page. So please do check it out. It's got a bunch of links to the sort of conference proceedings that Easy talked about, to all the maps that we've made, to our GitHub page, which is we're populating with things as quickly as we can. And in fact, Jibril's article is linked in that as well. I don't have the link right on me just now, but it's definitely in that summary that I've just posted. Lana, thank you for posting. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is the link for our sort of most persistent space. So we're calling this the K20 Think Tank curriculum. And so this is a Gather link. So this is, if you're making your own Gather space, this is what a link would look like. You create your own space, and if you're creating a space from any of our resources, it would be a sort of a unique URL, and that's what your students would click. So this space will bring you to our space that I can just very briefly show you. It is this curriculum space, and you'll see that a couple of us are in here already. And so as you walk around, you can see that there's that leaf space that I talked about. There's Jibril's museum here. There's a history of the Earth here. There's an art history space. Everybody's spaces are in here. So as you walk here, these are portals that you can walk on top of, and I ask you to press the enter key, and that'll bring you to them. Or you can press X as you get close. It'll open the note object, and you'll see that there's a little link there you can click to open in a new page. This is Blake's space that he talked about. Another thing on here for this event, which is quite cool, is Jesse and Brady put together this POAP. So if you click this, it'll open a QR code where you can create your own POAP and have that. If you don't know what a POAP is, there's a little description of what it is in this bulletin next to it. So click that, and that will give you a little info about it. If it does load, it should show you, there you go, how to set up your POAP app. There's a couple of resources. That's the last thing I wanted to mention. Up here in the library, there's some video resources and some links to articles up here that we'll try and keep populating. I'll put a link to the GitHub up there as well, so you can go ahead and get your own links. So between this and the Notion page, I think there should be a ton of resources for you. So please do explore, and feel free to jump in right now. I'm going to stick around in here so you can come and ask me questions. And if you have any questions at all, please do reach out at Twitter or email, however you want to get in touch. Probably Twitter is the easiest way. I'm really happy to connect to the community out there. If you've got any ideas for how to grow our gather spaces and how to make them more accessible by anybody, there's, as I mentioned, we can give you the background in the foreground, which I can show you here. So if this is the sort of behind the scenes, then everything that you see in color is pretty much the background, but there are a couple of things that are objects, like anything that's embedded. So that POAP website has got an embedded website in that. So you set that up and you put the website in here. And if we give you the background in the foreground, then you don't get that, right? So we can save the JSON file, which is the file that Gather store that in. And we can download that and give it to you, but it's a little bit tricky to upload that yourself. But we'll work on a system for that. So stay tuned and we'll figure that out.
Awesome. Terrence, thank you so much. And thank you guys, all the fellows, for doing such incredible work. So folks, just click on that GatherTown link that Terrence put in the chat. I'll put it in there again. And if you click on that link and just follow the directions, you can skip the tutorial. You can walk around all of those spaces and explore all of the spaces that everyone's created. And then you can actually leave this Zoom, platform actually and just be in GatherTown, because you can start having conversation with everybody there. So go ahead and do that. And thank you guys for coming. This was really wonderful. It's been such an incredible experience. We're going to post this on YouTube. We're going to live stream it. So, I guess not live stream it because it happened just now, but we'll post it on YouTube for other people to see. And if you have any questions about anything, just find one of us on GatherTown. We'll be there for the next few minutes. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. Great to see you all. Thanks to the fellows. Awesome to hear all your research.
All right, I'm going to open up the GatherTown link and actually share my screen and record that as well.
Great idea.
Terrence, I think it might be lagging because there are too many people in there. Is this the 500 person space or 25?
It's 25. Yeah, because this is the persistent space.
So folks that are still in here, reminder that if you are in GatherTown, you can exit out of Zoom. Terrence, is there a way to get back to the main space from these other spaces?
And just pressing the back button, it's the easiest way. Yeah, there's no portal.
Oh, I had no idea you could do that with GatherTown.
Hmm.
Oh my God, I just walked into a Monet.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy experience being so close to Monet, isn't it? Closer than you get in the gallery, huh?
Wow. Amazing.
And now there's no way out. You have to respawn from there.
Oh, is that right? Okay, you guys, I'm actually going to leave the Zoom. I'm going to close it out. If you already haven't gone into Gather, please do. The link is in the chat. I'll put it in there one more time. And I'll see you guys in there. I'm ending the Zoom now. Thank you all.